But that's my first memory of life, was watching my pops like completely lose it, and violently attack my brother, like to the point where I thought my brother was going to get murdered.
Wow.
And dragged him into the back room, locked him in there. And I just remember like standing in front of the door, trying to talk to my brother, see if he was still alive. My mom bought my dad a gas station in Anacostia, DC, which at that time was the murder capital of the world. And I started going there with my pops. And when I was 11 years old, I watched my father, as far as maybe a little bit further than Zeke is from me right now, I watched him get stabbed right in front of my eyes. I told myself I let my dad get stabbed and I didn't do anything about it. My pops had a diabetic stroke overnight. He couldn't walk, talk, eat, sleep, shit, nothing. And I catered to every single need he had. I was carrying my father as if he was my child. I was wiping his as if he was my child. I was spoon feeding him as if he was my child. I was putting him in bed as if he was my child. And I would just sit there, like rub his head and be like, I want you to know how much I love you. You are the greatest love of my life. All I ever wanted was to make you proud. You know, why'd you treat me like this? Like, I love you so much. And I was in the basement of my 4-story house. My kids were on the top level with their nanny. And I had these 2 women with me and mountains of cocaine in my basement with my children in my home. And went into another substance abuse psychosis. And woke up chained to a hospital bed again. Except this time, there was about 14, 15, 16 cops in the room. And then they all left and a new one walked in. He introduced himself as a detective. And basically along the lines of being like, I know what you do, I know who you are, thinking I was like some big time drug dealer or something, and you're gonna set someone up bigger than you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just relapsed, like I'm respecting my community. And it was just like, you're gonna work for me, I'm gonna ruin your life. And I'm like, I'm not gonna ruin a random person's life because you're trying to ruin mine. And then he said, are you a registered gun owner? And I said, yeah, I'm a registered gun owner. And he said, well, whoever bails you out of jail tomorrow, I recommend you have them remove them from your home because you may want to use them on yourself.
Welcome back to the Get Back podcast. This episode is sponsored by Just Meats. My name is Greg Kelly. I'm right here with my co-host, Zeke Pike.
And today we're joined by a good friend of mine who's got an incredible story. And I've had the pleasure of meeting you through another one of our guests that we actually had on our show as well, Nick. And Tarek Chaudhary.
My man.
Did I handle that?
Oh yeah, spot on, baby. Perfect.
Welcome to the Get Back podcast, brother.
Thank you, brother.
We're glad to have you here today. And I think Greg and I both are super eager to hear your story and your transformation and, where you're at, what you've gone through, and, what you're kind of doing moving forward now in your life.
Hey, man, I'm grateful to be able to share that story. My purpose, the reason I'm here, man, is because the transformation I had in my life, and the key to that transformation was spirituality, right? And that's the thing that was missing from my life all along. So no matter what I did, nothing was going to work. Nothing was going to last. Nothing was going to fulfill me. So I listened to God for the first time in my life. I walked away from everything, and that's how I'm here today, man.
It's amazing.
Walk us through your life, who Tarek is, and some of the experiences that you've faced throughout your life, and kind of what it's done for you in your life, and how it's allowed you to get to where you're at now in your life. And from at least what I've been able to hear of your story, and this is my first time really being able to hear you share it, is very similar to me. A lot of pain and a lot of difficult situations at a young age that I don't think at times, for me at least, I didn't always handle that the best. So I'm anxious to hear your transition and transformation through some of the struggles that you faced, especially through your childhood.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I appreciate the opportunity to share that. And I just want to give some context. The best thing a human being can do is go back to the childhood and understand the points at which we were conditioned in that childhood, because that allows us to give ourselves the grace to understand something was conditioned into us. It's not who we are, it's what we experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also want to start by saying this. The greatest transformation, especially any man can have, when you actually become a man, is when you stop looking back saying why this happened to me, and you understand why everything happened for you.
Mm.
Because that's when you take the acceptance and the ownership and you use it to help other people. Right? And that's massive. So I have absolute love for my father. I have absolute understanding for my father. I understand exactly what my parents' lives and experiences were and why that transitioned them into who they became, and who they became ultimately created who I became. And so creating that forgiveness for them, having that understanding for them creates empathy, and empathy creates healing, and you heal from those resentments. So I was born in Washington, D.C. I actually found out recently I was born with the spelling of Tarek. I had to go get my birth certificate, and I saw my name and I was like, what? And then I saw a change in writing at the bottom. But I was born in D.C. My pops immigrated here from Pakistan. My mom immigrated here from Jordan. She's 100% Armenian. After the genocide, they fled Armenia to Palestine. And then after the occupation, they fled Palestine to Jordan. And then my mom came here. So my mom is from the first converted Christian nation in the history of the world.
Wow.
So Catholicism runs deep on my mom's side of the family. And my pops came from Pakistan, Muslim. And so I have a devout Catholic mother and had a devout Muslim father. And it's really important for me to say that up front, because that's going to give some context to what my childhood was like and where the pain came from.
How was that dynamic, like between the two religions? Because I know, in the scripture it says don't be unequally yoked, and so I'm wondering, in your childhood, I know you're going to get into it, but I'm like thinking in my head, wow, that must have been really tough.
It was absolutely tough, bro. You got to think about it. When my mom wants me to be Catholic and my dad wants me to be Muslim, that means I can never make one of my parents happy. And so you think about that conflict as a child. One of my parents won't love me if I make this choice from a very early age. And to go back to the root of your question, in the beginning, my memories of that contrast were good. My pops would be at church with my mom. My mom would be at the mosque with my dad. But then as we began to mature as children and we were able to grasp the concepts, it was like, well, my children are Muslim. No, my children are Catholic. And that's where all the contention started. And that was one piece, man. But my pops had demons, bro. He had a lot of demons. And so there was a lot of violence. In the beginning, it was a lot more physical, and the majority of it was inflicted upon my older brother. And I had my share. So as a child, the number one thing inside of me that I knew more than anything, that I felt more than anything, that I understood more than anything, was fear. I felt no sense of safety wherever I was. Like if I got my ass beat at school, I couldn't come home and say anything about it because then I'm weak and then I'm going to be disciplined accordingly. So I didn't really feel like I fit in, man. But that's my first memory of life, was watching my pops completely lose it and violently attack my brother, like to the point where I thought my brother was going to get murdered.
Wow.
And dragged him into the back room, locked him in there. And I just remember like standing in front of the door, trying to talk to my brother, see if he was still alive. And then my brother disappeared. And I was about 4 or 5 years old at that time. And I had no comprehension. Like I remember my brother and my pops, that happening. And then all of a sudden my brother's gone. And I think it was probably like 2 or 3 years after that, maybe my mom tried to start explaining things to me. And she says, you know, I'm not actually your brother's mom. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And she's like, your dad has another family. And I said, what? What do you mean?
Also, he was Muslim, so he probably had...
He had an arranged marriage. But so
I
my
got you.
mom told me when he first asked her to marry him, she said no, because you have another wife. He had an arranged marriage in Pakistan. You can't fault the man for that. That's where he came from. That's how it was there, right?
Yeah.
But she was like, no. So I guess my pops was so in love with my mom, he came back and was like, all right, I divorced her. But if he were to actually do that, and this is something, again, where like resentment is one of the strongest, most powerful emotions in the world, bro.
Yeah.
My mom resented my dad for that so much, but if he had divorced her, that would mean that his children there were considered bastards and entitled to absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So what kind of choice does my pop have to make in that situation? But my mom's heart was so broken when she found out. She found out he never divorced her while I was in her womb. And so when she tells me my dad has another family, she then tells me I have a brother who's 4 months older than me. And I'm like, what? And so what happened was, after my parents had my sister, my pops went back to Pakistan and he got his other wife pregnant. That while my mom was pregnant with me, he came back from Pakistan with my oldest brother, said, you're going to raise him. And I'm still married. And I just had another child with my other wife. And so the trauma my mom experienced while I was in the womb with her, she never actually got over. She loved my pops so much, man, but she harbored that resentment. She could never fully let go and fully forgive. And you know, if you resent somebody for something, you're blocking the health of your relationship. You're blocking that unconditional love. You're blocking that surrender.
Yeah.
And they would beef all the time. And my pops had a temper. He'd go from 0 to 100, you know, either completely shut down and disconnected or out of control. And there was a lot of volatility, man. A lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, a lot of name calling, a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse. And, you know, I would remember, like, my parents didn't even sleep in the same room. I lived in the room with my mom, and I would always go into the bathroom and find my mom curled up in the shower in the fetal position, crying, screaming. And so that also created this perception of my father as the villain, right? And it was false, because I couldn't comprehend what he had been through, the choices he had to make, what his life was like. And you know, back then, especially from a other culture like that, bro, like, you don't ask for help. You don't share your emotions. Like, you don't do anything like that.
Yeah.
And so he was trapped in his own pain.
So do you think, like, a lot of time in our personalities, each and every single one of us have certain personalities, and our personalities are developed by how we react to external stressors that are put upon us. So, like, if you're super anxious, it means that you have a fear of something that you cherish. It's a threat of it being taken away from you. So you're anxious. What do you think your father was going through? What type of external stressors or emotions bottled up that he was going through to be able to have him? So he had that personality, that rage personality, that anger, that violent personality. What do you think he was going through as a man?
Emasculation. He felt he couldn't be the leader because of my mom's contention and resentment and challenging towards him. And so he didn't feel like he was the leader of the family. Plus, he didn't feel like he could be forgiven. He didn't feel like, in a way, like he belonged.
Yeah.
You know, he felt like my mom was trying to control the family. And as a man, especially a Muslim man, what does that do to him? And more than anything, like, look, my pops, even though he tried to hide some emotion, that man has so much love in him, bro.
Yeah.
And he was terrified that he would lose my mom.
No.
What could he do? He couldn't divorce that other woman. His other son would suffer tremendously. That woman who was his first wife in an arranged marriage, she would suffer tremendously. You know, so I believe what it boiled down to was my pops felt trapped. He felt completely trapped. And also, like, I grew to understand, like, his pops had like 5, 6, or 7 families and was never there. And the only relationship he had with his pops was my dad's mom would be like, your son did this, 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 and this. And his dad would just beat the shit out of him. So it's only a disciplinary relationship. So he never received paternal love. You know what I'm saying? And so obviously as a man who never received that, you long for it. And he wanted to give that to his children, but he didn't know how.
What's up, guys? We just wanted to take a quick moment to thank our main sponsor for today's episode, Just Meats. We've been testing out the Just Meats products for the last few weeks, and we absolutely love them. A few of my personal favorites are the Hawaiian, teriyaki beef and chicken, and the braised beef as well. Just Meats is a meal prep service fueled purely by grass-fed, grass-finished meats. Every Just Meats product comes with a pound of meat prepped and ready to go. Each Just Meats products comes with 4 servings. Every serving is 30 grams of protein or more. The ingredients are extremely clean and allergy friendly. And Just Meats offers a variety of chicken, pork, and beef products and has over 15 different flavor options to choose from. And not to mention, they come out with a subscriber exclusive flavor each month, and the raspberry barbecue chicken was incredible. You can create a one-time order to try out the Just Meats products, or you can sign up now for a subscription to have great quality protein delivered to your doorstep each month. So guys, use code GETBACK to get $25 off your order. And first-time subscribers get 20% off their order and an additional $25 when they use code GETBACK at checkout. Subscribers continue to get 10% off their order each month. And guys, subscribers have exclusive access to specialty meat flavors that change monthly. You don't want to miss this. So check out Just Meats products at justmeats.com and make sure you use code GETBACK. Now back to the episode.
You know? And so like I remember, man, there's certain moments in my life where it was bittersweet. I used to say, I wish he just hated me all the time, because then I wouldn't have to love him so much the way that I do. You know, one day my pops would tell me, you're a good for nothing piece of shit. You're a fucking bum. You're worthless. No one will ever love you.
Yeah.
The next day, if I got hurt, that man would have murdered anybody in his path to be by my side as quickly as possible. The fear of something happening to me, the fear of losing me, the fear of me being hurt. And so it was such a confliction for me, bro. It's like one day this man just treats me like I'm the bottom scum of the earth. And the next day this man treats me like I'm the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so it created so much confusion about how to feel about him, man.
He was very emotionally unbalanced.
Very emotionally unbalanced.
That probably was hard for you though, because it probably made you confused. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? What is right? What is wrong? And what is pleasing to him? What is not pleasing to him? And
100%.
I think as men, for whatever reason, we desire and long for a father's love, right? And I think that's where losing my dad, I've grown deeper in my relationship and found that, you know, a longing for a relationship with a father is like kind of our ultimate desire, because for me, even in my life, it's like, yeah, I always wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to make him happy, right? Like I wanted to think that I was doing good in, you know, the things I did. And he always made me feel that way. But I could imagine, and he made me feel that way even when I was wrong. So I don't know the other side of it. But I could imagine being young and being at a young age that like, that's conflicting. Like, what the heck am I, am I doing wrong? Why is he yelling at me? Why is he beating me? Why is he, now what am I doing right that he loves me? And I'm going to try to do that again the next day, but then it doesn't work the next day. And you're like, what the hell?
You're spot on, bro.
Yeah.
I always tried to be something that wouldn't bring the monster out.
Mm.
And it was survival of the fittest for everybody in my home, man. What can I do right to maintain a level of calmness?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's nothing.
Right.
Because you can't control somebody's emotions.
No.
No matter how bad we want to, you can't, man. But you're spot on, bro. And so it created a massive identity crisis.
Right.
What do I need to be? Who do I need to be? How do I need to be? And it was massive. And then, bro, the differentiation in the stark contrast in my family's cultures, I felt like I didn't fit in with either side of my family either.
Right.
Where
were you living? You were in the States, right?
Yeah. I was born in DC.
Okay.
I grew up in Northern Virginia. And like, I remember, cousins on my pop side of the family, they call me half-breed. And so like, I didn't fit in with my family on that side. And then on my mom's side, I also felt like I didn't fit in, even though there was a lot of love, bro. But when you just feel like you don't fit in, like you don't belong, whether people treat you right or wrong, you automatically assume that you don't.
Right.
So I just, no matter where I went, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere, that I wasn't good enough. It was conditioned into me that I wasn't good enough. It was told to me all the time that I wasn't good enough, and that voice in your head isn't even your voice, but you're the only one that can hear it.
Yeah.
And that voice is created from those relationships that were supposed to nurture you, that were supposed to love you, that were supposed to build up your character. And so the voice in my head is, you're a good for nothing piece of shit. And it's a belief. And I always say this, man, when you feel like you got to prove somebody wrong, when you feel like you got a chip on your shoulder to prove somebody wrong, it's because you actually believe they're right. Otherwise, you wouldn't try to prove them wrong.
Right.
You'd be secure enough to know that they're wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was me my whole life, bro. I wanted to prove everyone wrong because I believed they were right.
That's so true, man. Like, when you're saying that and you're hearing your father's voice in your head, just on repeat, right? Have you had any of those voices lately in your life, like going through a tough time or just going through a season of your life? Have you ever heard your father lately in your head? I say it because I've heard mine. And before you answer, I'll tell you mine real quick. But when I was this last ultra I was doing, 31 miles, around mile 22, I started hallucinating a little bit. It's whenever you don't get enough calories in your body, and it's my first ultra, so I didn't necessarily know how to, like, when I need to eat, when I need to drink salt, when I need to eat calories. So I started hallucinating a little bit. You want to talk about hearing your dad's voice? When growing up, my dad was kind of like a lot like yours. Like my dad, he dealt with a lot of external stressors on him. He was a car salesman. He needed to meet quotas, and when he didn't, he felt stressed. He would bring it home. He would have maybe 1 or 2 extra glasses of wine when he shouldn't have. He would get really loud sometimes, but never physical. That's one great thing I love about my dad. He never hit my mom and never hit us. But man, that thorn in his side, right? That demon he had was just taking an extra glass of wine, just to kind of calm the nerves and calm the anxiety that maybe he was going to get fired or so. My dad, when he'd get mad, he would up and leave sometimes after just yelling at my mom. And I wouldn't see him for like a week. But my dad, all the time though, sometimes, and he would go to Iowa, right, to go visit his mom. And he would actually let us know that he's in Iowa and he needs to be here for a little while. And he'd come back. But like, now that he's gone, I don't remember those parts of my dad, because how I choose to remember my dad is whenever he was outside of that fence at the football stadium at 5 a.m. whenever I was playing spring football with his little McDonald's cup of coffee. And I was playing safety, so I would be in my back pedal, and he would see me how I break on a post route to go cover the receiver. And when I would go get that interception, I mean, he would be hooping and hollering, so proud of his son. And during the football games, he would be with the other football dads, letting them know who I was and that he was my dad, and so I remember that, and I could always count on looking up at the bleachers and him being there, looking at his son, being proud of him, loving him, and acknowledging him to other dads. And so when I was running that ultra, man, I was climbing this 200-meter hill, and my legs were getting heavy, my brain was getting fried, and I just heard this voice in my head. And I just opened up. I looked around. I looked in the wood to try to see my dad, and I couldn't, because all I heard was, "Keep going, Greg, keep going, keep going." And when I was running track, my dad used to say that all the time when we were run the 400 and I was trying to pass somebody up. But it's so crazy, man, because those voices you do hear in your head whenever you're as a childhood, especially whenever you're at your weakest point. And have you ever heard your dad's voice lately in anything?
It's interesting, man. I've worked so hard to change the voice in my head in so many ways.
Yeah.
I just focus on my pops' pain instead of his voice.
Yeah.
Because when I focus on his pain, I don't really hear that voice, because I know that voice that was there wasn't real.
Just try to understand his pain.
100%, man.
Do you think your journey in your faith has given you a stronger empathy for your father?
Brother, if I never dropped to my knees and called out to God, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now.
Yeah.
My faith is what taught me about forgiveness. My faith is what taught me about resentment. That in a 12-step recovery program, which is centered in spirituality.
I love that. I hear that we've had guests come on and talk about that program.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you think about the most prolific symbol and shape in the world, in all of history, it's the triangle. Everything is about a 3. Nothing can be in balance without this. And so for me, it's spirituality. It's mind, body, spirit. Right? Spirit's at the top. And you look at our faith, it's the Holy Trinity, right? It's all 3. Yeah. All 3 play a different part, different role. And spirituality is the pillar of everything in life. And I had none of it. I was spiritually dead. Right? And so how can I overcome fears, regrets, grief, anxieties, limiting beliefs if I don't believe the most powerful source in the world loves me unconditionally?
Yeah.
That unconditional love that I received from my Savior, who am I not to give that to everybody else? If I'm redeemable, how is my Father not redeemable?
Yeah.
If I'm forgiven, how is my Father not forgiven? If God loves me unconditionally, how can I not love everybody else unconditionally? And there's sides of the coin, bro. Like, I'll be honest with you, I was at the gym and I always wear my cross on the outside.
I like that.
No matter where I am, bro. Yeah. I glorify God in all I do. It's literally put God in the center of all you do, and all you do shall prosper. It's the way I live. And I was at the gym. This cat came up to me and said, "Yo, man, I really respect you wearing your cross all the time, this and that." And then this trans person walked by. And he started dogging, just degrading. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, man, Jesus didn't die on the cross for believers. Jesus died on the cross for all of us. And if that person is worthy of Jesus Christ's love and respect, they're worthy of my love and respect. If they're redeemable and I'm redeemable, Jesus died for everybody. He didn't die for Christians. He died for everybody. And who are you to judge if he doesn't judge you?" And dude never talked to me again. Never talked to me again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. And I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I learned from Jesus Christ's word. I learned from how he treats me. I learned from what he did for me. And that's what I try to take to everybody else, man. I want to say this, like when I dropped to my knees in despair, I literally said, I looked up, I said, I don't know who you are. I don't know what your name is, but if you're real, I beg you to save my life. And 10 minutes later, it was Jesus Christ who answered me. How can I deny that it's him?
Yeah.
That's where I say this, bro. I became a believer in 2020. I became a follower in 2022. I became a servant in 2023. What saved my life was the voice of the Holy Spirit telling me to Google the time on the TV. It was 10:26 p.m. I had just come home from jail. My first time ever in jail. I was facing a lot of consequences. A lot of consequences. And that's when I dropped to my knees. Googling Bible 10:26, it was Matthew 10:26 that came up, saved my life. And it still took me 2 more years before I ever opened up a Bible. That's how much ego I had. Now, people think egotistical people are full of themselves. BS, bro. It's the majority of people who are so insecure about ourselves who have ego. A massive inferiority complex is the same thing as a massive ego complex. Right? And it took 2 more years, bro. And it took me again having to drop to my knees. But this time I didn't beg God to save me. I begged God to kill me. I begged him to kill me.
Wow.
And he did. He killed the man that I was. He broke me into submission. I was a control freak in every aspect of life. I wanted what I wanted. I wanted it my way. Even after he saved my life, I wanted to get back up my own way.
Yeah.
And that's when I started centering my life in the Bible. Bro, I had to walk away from everything, man. The lowest point a man can get is suicide, especially as a father. I couldn't pull the trigger, but I asked God to do the job for me. And so I walked away from everything. And my life was nothing but the Bible and AA. That was it. I spent 4 hours a day inside the Bible. I meditated seeking God. I walked through nature seeking God. I was in AA seeking God. I was seeking God's answers in all the people he put in my life. Because the Lord's work is done through us.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Absolutely.
And man, that's where all that fear of everything, and don't get me wrong, man, being fearless just means fearing a little less. That's what fearlessness is. It's a little less fear. And the moment I finally had 51% faith and 49% fear, acted in faith, not living in fear, my life changed forever, bro. Dude, I was at the point in my career, I was making 7 figures. And I walked away from it, and it's the only thing I knew. And I walked away from it because I had to have faith in what God's purpose was for my life. He didn't do all this for me to just go back and live the life that I used to live. He wanted me to be he transformed me into a completely different man for a reason. And I decided to serve him. And that's why I said in 2023, I became a servant. Bro, I've sold almost everything I own to pursue his calling for my life with no fear. Now, don't get me wrong. I shouldn't say no fear. Those doubts come in, but my faith is stronger than my fear.
Yeah.
And so I continue to follow the faith, not fall into the fear.
Wow.
And that's the most liberating experience on earth, man. And going back to all of that is because I finally believe I'm worthy of love. I never believed I was worthy of love. I thought love was transactional. I thought I had to do something to be loved. I thought I had to be something to be loved. I thought I had to give something to be loved. I thought I had to be of value to somebody to be loved. I'll never forget, man, I was in therapy one time and my therapist started crying. I'm like, why are you crying? And she's like, I'm so sorry. I know this is so unprofessional, but my heart just breaks. And I'm like, why? And she goes, because you have so much love to give, but you are completely incapable of receiving it. You're incapable of receiving love. And it made something snap inside of me, bro. Just I snapped, but I had to, man. I had to, because if I didn't experience that pain, if I didn't experience that suffering, if I didn't experience all those gifts that were given to me as a child, I wouldn't be here today, bro. I wouldn't be here today. And now I'm so grateful to God. Like, I look at it like this, bro. God sent his only begotten son, his most cherished creation, to suffer more than any human being ever would on the face of this earth.
Yeah.
The one he loved the most, he chose to suffer the most. And when God chooses us to suffer, it's for his purpose.
Yeah.
And that's where you find the joy in suffering.
That's what I was about to say, is that Christ actually found joy in it because he knew what he was doing, even though he even questioned God. He said, he went to the garden. He said, man, just take this cup from me if it's your will. But he also said, hey, man, I'll go and do it too. Like, and he went to go do it, and he found so much joy. And I think now, as I go through pain, being exonerated, as I go through the trauma that I went through as well, and it comes up randomly, man. And sometimes I find it whenever I'm running, and that's why I do the running, is where I found the most joy and the most peace of my life is in the middle of the suffering. And it's just like, I'm addicted to it because I've tapped into understanding the amount of joy as a man, as a husband, a soon-to-be father, as a boss.
I'm happy for you, bro. That's
Dude,
amazing.
it's amazing, man. And it's like a nicotine to me. I have to keep getting it. You know, I have to go back into the pain, into the suffering, because I know that you know how I see it? I see that there's Jesus waiting there for me. It's like I'm going for my little fix. You know, it's like, what you got for me, Lord? You know, okay, I'll take it back to my life now. And I'll wake back up into comfortable part of my life. And then I'll go meet Jesus again in the suffering. All right, what do you got for me now? Then I go back to, okay, be a better husband, be a better boss, be a better brother, be a better friend. You know, all right, go back into the suffering, you know? And then it's just, it's a beautiful picture, you know, it's a beautiful picture to think about. What happened next?
I want to start with an experience in my early adolescence. I was 11. My mom bought my dad a gas station in Anacostia, DC, which at that time was the murder capital of the world. And I started going there with my pops. And when I was 11 years old, I watched my father, as far as maybe a little bit further than Zeke is from me right now, I watched him get stabbed right in front of my eyes.
Sure.
And that experience solidified that I'm a piece of shit. I told myself I let my dad get stabbed and I didn't do anything about it. Now think about that in hindsight. I was an 11-year-old child, but my traumatized, jacked up mind said, you're a piece of shit, you let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was so tired of being afraid that I wanted to be somebody different than who I was. And that's where my addiction really, really became a necessity. Because the moment I got drunk for the first time in my life, I was a completely different person. I had no inhibitions. I was afraid of nothing. I would pursue danger. People were afraid of me when I was drunk. Nobody would F with me. Bro, I got bullied so bad in grade school, man. So bad. I got my ass beat all the time. I was a target. Everyone could see the brokenness in me. They could smell the fear. They could smell that I just couldn't stand up for myself. And it created such self-hatred, man. Such self-loathing. And that's why I always wanted to be on some form of a substance, because it was an escape from me. And by the time I was 21, I knew I had a problem. I knew I had a problem. I just didn't know how to ask for help. So I admitted, and I was okay with it. And then the first time I really was like, I gotta change my life. I can't live like this anymore. Like, I don't want to be nothing. I do want to be something. I want to try. I enlisted in the Army. And it was the first time in my life I actually applied myself.
Mm.
And it was the first time in my life I actually realized what type of mental capacity I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave it my all. Now, understand this though. I had been essentially a drunk and drug addict for almost a decade. What kind of shape do you think my body was in? But my mind wanted it so bad that it didn't listen to my body, to the point where I almost died. I got hospitalized because I literally just fell over. Like my body couldn't move anymore.
Mm.
And I had destroyed over 80% of the muscle tissue in my body. My kidneys had started bleeding.
Mm.
And I was hospitalized. And then after a couple months, they were like, all right, you can go back to full duty. It came right back. And they were like, you're done, warrior. You can no longer fulfill basic soldier duties. Here's an honorable force retirement. Thank you for your service. And then again, you see, he's right. You ain't good enough. You ain't good enough, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
You are a piece of shit. No matter what you do, you'll never be good enough. And that self-hatred amplified even more. And then when I got back, I was the worst I ever was with the drugs and alcohol, man. And, you know, I was good at my job. Like I got my high school friend's family before I enlisted, after I had stopped running the gas station. Her pops was like, you're going to come work for me. You're going to make something of yourself. You're going to come work for me. But bro, it was at the point where like they knew who I was. They would drug test me like every 3 days. And I had a gallon of clean piss that I hid at my desk. So if they drug tested me, I could just nuke it in the microwave and hand it to them.
Mm.
You know? And then even when I was like, I got to go get my life together, I'm enlisting. He was like, I'm proud of you. And whenever you get back, if you want your job, it's waiting for you. And I got out and he gave me my job back. And bro, I was like, at that time, before I enlisted, I was 23, 24, and I was making like $50,000 a year, which back then is like, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I got back and I was making less because I was just so focused on, bro, I was snorting Roxaset and Oxycontin off the toilet at work. I'd be at my desk, nodded out.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad it was, man.
Yeah.
And then finally they fired me. They're like, we love you, man, but that's it. You're done. Then I got another job and this was in tech sales. All of this was in tech sales. Then I got another job at a startup when I was 27. And the guy who hired me later on told me the only reason I hired you, man, is because you're a veteran and I like to help veterans. I have no education. I barely graduated from high school with a 1.2 GPA.
Mm.
I had to go to night school. I had to go to summer school. Like I barely got a high school degree. And so I was there, and then like, you know, I was in the top 3, never number 1, but always number 2, 3, or 4. And he was a role model to me. Like a lot of stuff, he reminded me of my dad, but he treated me the way he did because he actually believed in me. He was so frustrated with me because he saw something in me. He knew it was there. So he was a dick with good intention.
Mm.
Like and honestly, bro, My dad might have been the same way, but he never expressed
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And it was at that point, bro, where my true identity, God, life, forced me to become something capable that I never thought I could be capable to be. My pops had a diabetic stroke and had early rapid onset dementia. Overnight, he couldn't walk, talk, eat, sleep, shit, nothing.
Our dads had the same thing, like overnight.
Overnight,
Yeah, dementia killed him within 3 years.
same thing. And so my mom and I took care of him. We never put him in a home. I lived like 3 minutes from my parents' house at that time. And, you know, I'd help my mom as much as I possibly could. I remember one time, like, it's like being a prisoner. I'm saying that to you, you know,
No, yeah.
but like, it's 24/7 care.
Yeah.
Like, you can't leave them alone for even 60 seconds. And I remember one time I was like, Mom, you got to get out of here. And this is probably one of the most grateful experiences of my life. And so I sent my mom to the beach with my aunt, and it was just me. 4 days with my pops. And I catered to every single need he had. I was carrying my father as if he was my child. I was wiping his ass as if he was my child. I was spoon feeding him as if he was my child. I was putting him in bed as if he was my child.
Yeah.
And I would just sit there, like, rub his head and be like, I want you to know how much I love you. You are the greatest love of my life. All I ever wanted was to make you proud. You know, why'd you treat me like this? Like, I love you so much. And I get to carry that. I know that when he needed me the most, I did show up as the son that he needed. And I had a beautiful experience because in his final days, I'm laying in the hospital bed with him. And I said, I love you, Dad. And the only words he was ever able to mutter in 3 years was, I love you, son.
Oh.
And so I always held that, no matter how much trauma pain was there, I always held it. But while my pops was dying, my brother was like, hey, man, I want to get fucked up. And so I went over and I brought over some ecstasy and we did some E. And the next day, my brother calls me and he's like, man, I don't feel good. Somebody right? I'm like, oh, bro, you probably just hung over, drink a bunch of water.
Mm.
And then the next day he calls me again. He said, bro, I got this headache like I've never felt before. And I'm like, all right, go to the doctor. And he doesn't. And then the next day he calls me again. And now like his words are like slurred. Like he's like, he can't even talk. And I call my sister. I'm like, yo, someone's got to take him to the doctor. Like something's not right.
Yeah.
And so my sister calls me. I'm at work. And she's like, you need to get to the fucking emergency room right now. So I left work. I go. And the doctor's like, your brother suffered a massive brain aneurysm and he could die any second.
Wow.
And rushed him to Fairfax Hospital ICU. And that's when they were like, your brother is in the most critical condition a human being can be in. And I said, what does that mean? And they said, that's what it means. He's in the most critical condition a human being can be in. And he got admitted. And they're like, what's happened? This, and this. And I told them, I said, yo, like, we did some ecstasy. And they go, well, that might be what caused this. And it got to the point where, you know, my dad and my brother are dying at the same time. And all I can do is numb And then my brother, I think, was in the ICU for like 2 or 3 months, something like that.
Wow.
And, having my dad at home and my brother in the hospital, and me, my mom, and my sister trying to manage all of this, it was, you're not even existing. You're just reacting. You're surviving, right? You're just surviving. It's just primal instinct to survive through something like that. And then my brother, by God's grace, recovered. To this day, he still doesn't have any feeling on the right side of his body. He's got a really bad stutter and a speech impediment, and he's got a jacked up memory, but he's here.
Wow.
And then I think maybe it was the day after we brought my brother home that we were back in the ICU with my dad. Because it got to the point now where like, it wasn't, he couldn't only not eat, he couldn't swallow anymore. And, I looked at the doctor. I just knew. I looked at the doctor. Let me talk to you outside. I said, how long? He said, well, we can put him on a feeding tube and that'll be the quality of his life. Or if you decide to let the man just die the way he's supposed to, he's got 7 days.
Wow.
And, that was the choice. And that's what he wanted too. So brought him home on hospice, and every spoon of morphine I gave him, I would drink the rest of the bottle. And the doctor gave me this little book. It's called The Stages of Death.
I got that too.
And so I knew what to look for. And while my mom and my sister were holding on to this hope for a miracle, says within 48 to 72 hours of your death, your soul wants to experience joy one last time.
Yeah.
And your soul takes over your body, and you might sit up and you might be smiling and you might ask to eat your favorite meal. And that's what happened. And my mom and my sister were like, oh my God, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we got like 48 hours. I don't tell them that, but I'm just preparing for it.
Yeah.
And on November 19th, 2010, my father died in my arms. And, after he died and we were all crying, and my mom was there, my sister was there, my brother was there. So his whole family here was in the room holding him while he died. He took his last breath and all the foam came out of his mouth. And then everyone else in my family walked out of the room, and I did what I had to do. I promised him, I will send you to your maker based off of your beliefs. I will do this. And so I had to remove all the jewelry from my father's body. I had to shave him completely. Like, I'm shaving my dad's pubes, everything.
Oh.
And then I had to wrap him up. I picked him up and I put him in the hearse. I went to the morgue with the imam, and the imam prayed over my father as I washed his body. And I wrapped him in a shroud, and I picked him up and I put him in a little wooden box. And I picked out his burial plot, and 12 hours later I was putting him in the ground. But apparently the plot I got didn't fully face Mecca. So I had to open it back up, and I had to take his head, and I had to move his head to the side.
Oh.
And then I had to look at all these people and give a speech about my father. And I was just operating in a space I never knew I was capable of operating in.
Mm-hmm.
I was forced to be a leader.
Mm.
I was forced to be the only one who could handle this. And after my pops died, man, I spiraled worse than I ever did. And I remember one day, about 7 months after he died, I was at his cemetery, and I just started punching his grave as hard as I could. on my knees, just screaming, crying. Why'd you only ever break me down? Why'd you never build me up? Why'd you always tell me I was a good for nothing piece of shit, that no one would ever love me? Like, why'd you do this to me? I know you love me. Why'd you treat me like this? Punching as hard as I fucking could. And then that night, I let somebody put a needle in my arm for the first time. And, still completely jacked out of my mind, I went and I got some Molly, I got some Coke, I got some K, I went to the club, I got bottle service, and I'm getting as effed up as I possibly could. I still got the heroin in my system or whatever. I don't even know what was in the fucking needle, to be honest. And then I didn't know what was what, so I'll mix it all together. So I had a mountain of powder, and I just started snorting all of it. And then next thing I know, I'm waking up. And I try to move and I can't. And then I feel something against my wrists. I feel something against my legs. And I open my eyes and I'm chained, 4-point chains to a hospital bed. And I'm like, what's happening? My clothes are ripped to shreds. And I open my eyes and I start to get my vision. And my mother and my sister are standing in front of me.
Yeah.
And the shame, I just look what my family has endured and look what I'm giving to them.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, bro, instead of letting the pain break me, I use the pain to make me. And I said, I will never drink or do another drug in my life again. I will never drink or do cocaine or anything like that ever again in my life. And for 3,010 days, I didn't. I never went to AA. I never went to rehab. I never asked a human being for help. And I went from barely graduating high school, a drug addict, gutter rat, gutter dog, to within 5 years of my sobriety, being an executive at a Fortune 100 company because of my pain, because of my self-hate. I made it make me. I no longer let it break me. But I never dealt with the grief. I never dealt with the traumas. I had no belief in God. And all I wanted to do was prove everybody wrong because I believed they were right. And the reason I catapulted like that, bro, is because when I got sober after 6 months, and I was like, if I can conquer some addiction, what else can I do? And I became something completely different, bro. And I wanted to serve. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be the savior that I never had. I wanted to be the father that I never had. I wanted to be the inspirational figure that I never had. I wanted to be the positive influence in people's lives that I never had. I wanted to give everything I never had. But how can I truly give what I don't know?
Yeah.
I was a leader, man. I transformed so many lives, bro. When I had overcome all my adversity, when I was someone of stature, when I was someone of influence, when I was someone of capability, I went to the people I loved and I said, believe in me, trust in me, follow in me, and I will change your life forever. Guys I grew up with, my best friend, guys I served with, anyone. And I changed their lives. But I did all of it because I wanted to feel loved. And I was married. I had my first child. I had my second child, and I was miserable. At that point in my career, I was making like $500,000-$600,000 a year, and that's more money than some surgeon, than some professional athletes
More
make,
than enough.
And I had everything a man could want: money, family, respect, influence, beautiful things. I had everything a man could want. And I was miserable.
Still empty.
I felt like I wasn't good enough for anyone, that no matter what I did for people, I just wasn't good enough for them. And it was some things in my marriage that really just broke me, bro. And now I was a man who knew how to use pain instead of the pain using me. But when I chose to leave my wife and I was grasping for anything to escape my pain, except drugs and alcohol, grasping at relationships, grasping at sex, prostitution, everything I could possibly do. And none of it worked. And then finally one day I just said, fuck it. I was in Germany on a guy's trip, and I knew before we even got on the plane. Because it's so funny, man. The whole time I was sober, almost everybody in my life was like, man, you're not an alcoholic. Look at what you've done with your life. You're a different man. Enjoy yourself. Let loose a little bit. And for so many years, like, they're like, you don't think you can control your drinking? I go, absolutely, I can control my drinking by not drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew on this trip, man, I started to give up. And we're at Oktoberfest in Stuttgart at the wildest party you could ever imagine. And they're like, Tarek, you gonna have a drink with us? And I already knew. I was like, yeah, you know what, man? I will. Within 24 hours, bro. Within 24 hours.
Boy, was running.
I found the most gully, goony people in Europe I possibly could. And I took off with them. I left my friends. I was drinking, drugging out of my mind, spending tens of thousands of dollars, going into every brothel, being in a brothel for 48 hours with 15 women, and plates of drugs, and just disgusting sin, man. Just disgusting sin. I became the most disgusting version of myself I had ever been because I had resources and I had hatred of everyone else for the first time instead of just hatred of me. And I was a disgusting human being. And I came back. I didn't even come home with my friends. I stayed there by myself. And I had just, before this happened, I had reached the pinnacle of my career. I was running North American government sales for the second largest software company in the world. I was 37 years old with no education, and I was a mid-level executive at one of the biggest companies in the world. And that ego trip and that hatred and that choice that I made, and then I had just been asked to go to its competitor and given more than double what I was making. But it was like, you don't get me without my people, because I am my people. The people I've built, the lives I've made for them, the loyalty, the culture, like what you're asking me to do, I can't do on my own. So don't waste your time unless you're going to bring all my people with me. And my people trusted me. They followed me. I was their leader. They could count on me. And I took them with me. And it was 1 month after I said, come with me again, that I went to this other company, Salesforce. And I even asked my boss, I was like, is it a good idea for me to go? Like, I know I just started. He was like, go. And I came back and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get sober again. Like that was, that's it. That's done. I'm not doing that again. And then a month later, I have to go to California and work for 3 weeks. And I had been involved with this woman like right after my separation, like instantly. And it was extraordinarily toxic. And it really triggered everything with my dad, because the way she treated me was how my father treated me. And so I tried to be the person I was with my father. Let me earn the love. Let me do whatever it takes. And then I go to California. I hadn't talked to her in a while. And then I go to California, and you wouldn't believe the circumstances with this woman, bro. Like, we break it off, and then I'd be driving in traffic. I look over and she's a car next to me. We wouldn't talk. I almost get in an accident. She's the one that almost hit me. And then when I was on my way to California, I felt it. I knew it. I was like, somehow she's going to be there. And lo and behold, I get to California. She's at the hotel next door.
Good.
And so we hang out, and then I start drinking again. And then for the second time in my life, I went to another substance-induced psychosis.
Mm.
I got my skull cracked open, woke up chained to a hospital bed, and living my worst nightmare. And then I came home after that, got sober again for 3 weeks. And then it was my cousin's 21st birthday. And we all went out and everyone was getting fucked up. So then I decided to go to the other level of the club and start taking as many shots as I could so that they wouldn't know. And then I did something that was the worst thing I ever did to somebody I love, ever. And I felt more shame for myself than I'd ever felt. So there's only one thing I knew how to do. I was get lost in drugs. And I was in the basement of my 4-story house. My kids were on the top level with their nanny. And I had these 2 women with me and mountains of cocaine in my basement with my children in my home. And went into another substance-induced psychosis.
Mm.
And woke up chained to a hospital bed again. Except this time, there was about 14, 15, 16 cops in the room.
Mm.
And then they all left and a new one walked in. He introduced himself as a detective. And basically along the lines of being like, I know what you do. I know who you are. Thinking I was like some big time drug dealer or something. And you're going to set someone up bigger than you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just relapsed. Like, I'm respecting my community. And it was just like, you're going to work for me. I'm going to ruin your life. And I'm like, I'm not going to ruin a random person's life because you're trying to ruin mine. He's like, I don't think you understand what I'm telling you. And I do. I said, I do. And he goes, last chance. I said, same answer. And then he said, are you a registered gun owner? Or are you a gun owner? And I said, yeah, I'm a registered gun owner. And he said, well, whoever bails you out of jail tomorrow, I recommend you have them remove them from your home because you may want to use them on yourself. And I didn't really quite fully understand what he was saying. But now, what had happened was I was in this psychosis and I somehow got out of my house in the middle of my street in my community, naked, screaming at the top of my lungs.
Wow.
And the first officer came. And again, guys, I told you everything about me is fear. I'm always trying to overcome fear. So in this psychosis, I see this and I'm like, this isn't real. This is a test of my fear. Let me break through the fear. So I charged. Big ass, naked, tattooed, maniac, not connected to reality, charging a cop. Tried to pull their gun. They couldn't. Retreated to their cruiser. Call for backup, 12 cops. It took 12 cops and tasers to take me down.
You're like Grand Theft Auto. Just
12 cops
disconnected.
tasing me to take me down. And imagine that experience for them, right? Looking back and taking accountability and ownership and responsibility and stop placing blame on everybody else is the only reason I can say this to you right now. Imagine what those people felt. That first officer, am I going home a murderer tonight? Am I going to have to kill this person? Is my life changing forever because of this person?
Mm.
Then the other officers, look what they did to my friend. You don't think they're justified in wanting to hurt me?
Yeah.
You talk about a group of loyalty, like blue blood runs thick. And when I got home from jail, well, when I was seeing the magistrate going to jail or getting out, getting my formal charges, then that's when I realized what the detective meant about ruining my life. And I got hit with charges that I could have spent a long time in prison. Yeah. And that's when I came home, dropped to my knees, and called out to God for the first time. And that's when I read Matthew 10:26, and it said, "Do not be afraid. There is nothing to fear. There's nothing concealed that will not be made known. There is nothing hidden that will not come to light. But do not be afraid of the ones who can break the mind and body here. What I whisper to you, proclaim from the roof. What I tell you in the night, shout in the day. Do not be afraid." I didn't know what it meant, but it told me not to be afraid 5 times, and all I felt was fear.
Mm-hmm.
What if anyone finds out? What's going to happen to my career? What's going to happen to my children? Am I going to prison? Like, what's going to happen to my life? And then the next day, I'm getting all these text messages, and I finally open one up, and all it says is, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how could they know? And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Bro, come on." And I said, "I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh my God, you really don't know." And I said, "No, what?" And then he sends me a link, and I open the link, and it's my mugshot on the front page of the news.
Mm.
And it was viral on social media. And everybody knew. And then I remembered what the cop said. And then I went to go get my gun. And then I remember what the Bible verse said. There is nothing concealed that will not be made known. There is nothing hidden that will not come to light. But do not fear the ones who can break the mind and body here. That's what I focused on. Just that part. Well, I didn't focus on the rest. Just that part. And it saved my life. And then the circumstances that happened, I go to court for the first charges. My lawyer says, "You're fucked. You're going to prison. This judge will show you no mercy. She's all about her political aspirations. You're done." Go in the courtroom. She gets an emergency. Substitute judge walks up. He felt so much pity for me. And he looked at my record and he's like, "This is a disabled veteran. This is a respected man. He was sober." My ex-wife was there. The prosecutor thought she was their witness. She was there to testify on my behalf.
Mm.
And then he's looking at the charges, and the judge is like looking at the prosecutor like, "I should take your license from you for even pursuing these fake charges." And it's like, "You got to make a deal with his lawyer right now on everything else. First, these charges, gone. Everything else, make a deal right now." They make a deal. My lawyer presents it to me. I'm like, "Man, I can't take that. I'll never be able to work again. I can't travel internationally. Like, I'll be done for." And he goes, "This is the best deal you're going to get." I sign it. Go to court, submit the deal. Prosecutor submits the deal in the wrong court system. Thrown out. I ended up with a fine of $250 for drunk in public.
On the contrary, you could have went to prison for a long, long, long time.
Did you tell me that's not God?
That's 100%.
Did you tell me that's not God's grace? When I finally called out to him and he said, "Welcome home, my son. I've been waiting for you." And I still didn't pick up a Bible. I prayed. I gave gratitude. I was watching church online. I prayed before I ate. Never opened a Bible. Never thought about the rest of what he said in the verses that saved me. What I tell you, go proclaim from the roof. It says in Proverbs too, what I say is simple, but only the wise can understand it. He said, don't be afraid. Whether you're honest or not, everything's going to come out. Be honest and go tell people what I did for you.
Yeah.
Proclaim from the roof what I say. It took me 3 years, bro. 4 more substance-induced psychoses, 4 more relapses. An AR-15 at the foot of Jesus Christ, ready to commit suicide, incapable of pulling the trigger, begging God to kill me so I don't have to go out like that and leave my children with a father who killed himself.
Mm.
And then I started to read the Bible. And then I made that relationship the most important thing in my life. And then after a year of understanding God's will for my life, making conscious contact with the Lord, going through a program of recovery, I realized that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to be a preacher. Like, I'm not made to be a preacher. But I can testify as the broken, as the sinful, as the bottom of the barrel scum, the redemption, the grace, the forgiveness, the love, the mercy, the power that we're all worthy of, no matter what we've done. If we truly are remorseful and we truly seek forgiveness. Bro, I walked away, but when I relapsed, I was making about $1 million a year. Between 2019 and 2023, I made $3.9 million, and I only worked 2 of those years. Because I would relapse and not capable of working, relapse, not capable of working, and I blew almost all of it on sin. All this money I earned, all this hard work, I stole my children's future. Both my sons have autism. They require services that cost money. I'm not going to be around when they're grown up. I was 38. I had more money than most people do when they retire. My children would have been set for life, and I blew it all on sin. And I wasn't working. But God still provided for me, no matter what.
Yeah.
Then I got laid off while I was on medical leave. But because I was on medical leave, they still had to keep paying me. And then on top of that, I got an executive severance package. I ended up getting paid double because all I did was sit to understand God's will for my life. I didn't go back because of the fear of financial insecurity. I started selling everything to continue to understand God's will for my life. I was acting in more faith than fear. And after about 1.5 years of doing that, the only influencer I followed on social media that I felt connected to was Nick Santonastasso. And I had given speeches in corporate America for so many years, and half the people that I served were like, bro, what are you doing here? Like, you should be the next Tony Robbins. Like, you change people's lives. Like, why are you in corporate America? And Nick put something out, and I felt God say, respond. And so I did. And then the next day I was having like a video interview with him. And I'm on my knees in front of that same painting of Jesus Christ where I had my AR-15, where I asked God to end my life. And I said, Lord, how do I know that this is the path? Because it was like, what do I do? And then at that point, the money had stopped. The disability money had stopped. The severance money had stopped. And my life was $30,000 a month. And it's like, Lord, like what do I do? And I remember Proverbs 16:3. Put God at the center of all you do, and all you do shall prosper. And I took it quite literally. Because God says it's a lot simpler than you think it is. So I took it literally. I rearranged all my furniture. I put my desk right at the middle of this 8-foot painting of Jesus Christ. I put my King Jesus t-shirt on, and I always have my cross out. And I didn't know anything about Nick's spirituality. I don't think he had ever posted anything about it. And I said, okay, God, if this turns him off, then I know he's not the one. If this connects us, then I know he is. Camera turns on. Nick looks at me. He looks up the painting and goes, that's the most beautiful painting of Jesus I've ever seen. Takes his one finger, shows me his cross. And I said, Nick, I don't care what your offer is. I'm in. He goes, hold up, champ. Let me make sure I want to work with you. Right? He says, you got 20 minutes. Rip your story. I rip my story. He looks at me and he goes, let's go. And I gave Nick, of the cash I had left, 2 sons, $30,000 a month, bills out the ass. I gave Nick a third of the money I had left. The next day I'm on my knees praying. Now, I told you I was in the Army. I told you I got hurt. What I didn't tell you is that the VA never paid me. I was in a 10-year battle with the VA. Next day I'm on my knees praying. And for the second time in my life, the voice comes in my stomach. And the Holy Spirit says, check the VA. I said, what? I haven't heard from my lawyer or the VA since April 2019. I said, what? Okay, Lord. Log into my VA e-benefits. Everything is approved.
Oh.
Holy Spirit says, check your bank account. I said, no way. Okay, Lord. I checked my bank account. 10 years of back pay deposited into my bank account. The moment I finally surrendered to God's will for my life, not my will, not my fear, not my ego, God's will for my life, the moment. And I always used to ask myself, bro, why'd I get hurt? Why'd I never get my money? Why'd I suffer? Why all this pain? Why? Poor fucking me. Why? I'm not a bad person. Poor me. And the moment I acted in faith, the moment I saw that money, every single one of those questions was answered. You didn't get that money because you weren't the man I built you to be yet. You weren't going to do what I needed you to do with it. You didn't deserve it. But I knew what my plan was. I knew what you were going to do. And then all those questions, all that pain, all that pity, that's when I stopped saying, why did this happen to me? To, I am so grateful all of this happened for me.
It's good.
Yeah.
It was the most liberating, inspiring, invigorating moment of my entire life. And I just went balls in, bro. And I'm still selling everything. I don't care. I know what it's like to be a millionaire and be miserable. I also know the wealth and abundance of simply going where God tells me to go and doing what God tells me to do. Surrendering my will. Bro, and then think about this too, man. I'm 100% permanently and totally disabled veteran. No matter what happens, my children are taken care of. Even if I die, my children get that money. I have enough for a very meek and rich life. I could never make $1 again in my life. My children will still have a roof over their head. My children will still have food on the table.
Yeah.
Is that enough for me? Or am I going to be wanting to go back? I could go back, get a job, and instantly, first year back, make at least $750,000. Instantly. But instead, I'm just dedicated to pursuing what God wants for my life. And bro, the closer you get to God, the closer the devil gets to you.
Yeah. Doesn't get easier.
You know? But God tests you. Like, bro, my number one prayer, Lord, no matter what happens, never let my faith waver. Lord, what's not meant for me, take it from me at any cost. I can't do it without you. I'm too weak to do it on my own. I give it to you. Take my remaining sin away. Take this lust away. Take this away. Take that away at whatever cost. And the fear of the Lord is the greatest fear I've ever had, because I know what he's done in my life. I know what it's took to transform me. And when I willingly say it, Whatever it takes, God, at whatever cost, take it away from me.
Yeah.
And he does. And bro, I was sober. And I haven't shared this publicly. I was sober. My life was beautiful. Everything I ever dreamed of, God's giving to me, this, and that. I'm living on a pink cloud, not looking to get effed up, nothing. And then I got involved with this woman, and then I started to create this resentment. And then I wasn't focusing on my own spiritual program of growth. I'm praying constantly. I'm doing God's will, but that devil was getting closer, bro. And one night it comes to me, and next thing I know, I'm drinking. And then what do I do with that? Do I go back into the spiral of shame, guilt, pity, anger, resentment?
Right.
Or do I receive God's love and forgiveness? Do I know that I'm worthy of it? Do I know where to go back to? Do I know what to do? Or do I give in to the devil?
Yeah.
Do I fear admonishment? Do I fear ridicule? Do I fear any of this? Or do I view this as a gift?
Yeah. I respect that a lot, though. And the reality is, I think for people who do struggle with addiction and alcoholism, that's the one thing that takes them back out. Like, even if they do relapse and they do use again, is the guilt and the shame that's like, well, I already did it. I'm just gonna keep going, versus being like, you know what, I did it. I'm just gonna accept it as like, I need to receive God's forgiveness right here, and I need to get back up, and I need to just start today, right? And so I think that's the one thing that, I respect and admire, is your willingness to be honest about that, but your willingness to be like, all right, I already know if I'm going to stay in guilt and stay in shame, a couple weeks from now, I'm going to be right back in the same vicious cycle that never ends.
100%, bro.
Yeah.
And 100%. And every time God knocks me down, is to bring me higher than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And to have the opportunity for him to answer my prayers, no matter what. Never let my faith waver. Whatever's not meant for me, take it from me.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it's everything is driven by God's purpose. Am I willing to receive it?
That's good.
You know what you remind me of a lot is the men that I spent time in prison with. These were guys that are down there for murder. They're down there for heavy drugs. They're down there for just the most disgusting crimes that you could ever think of. These are some of these men I spent time with. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I wouldn't let within my family with a 100-foot stick. And then also these same men that I got to meet that took me under their wing, and now I consider my spiritual fathers. Now that I actually hope and pray that one of them calls me, because I haven't heard from him in a while, and I have a hard time sometimes getting in touch with him over the phone, or he writes me, because this guy is my spiritual father. And sometimes navigating in this free world, I had this issue where I'm like, I need guidance. Like, I know I can be of influence for people, but just like before you're a Paul, you are Timothy. You're a Timothy. You're a Timothy. You're a person who's drinking milk. You're the person that's eating baby food. And then God calls you to something greater, and he makes you into a Paul. And the thing about Paul is that Paul, as he navigated and grew in his faith, he knew that before he was Paul, he was Saul. He was a persecutor of Christians. He did disgusting things. He put people in prison. And on the road to Damascus, Jesus revealed himself. God revealed himself in such a way that it just blew him back. And it just, and what's so, this is what's so beautiful is that
Paul killed more Christians than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
And
what's
that's
beautiful,
Jesus chose.
What's beautiful about Paul is that he knew the word, he knew the scripture. I mean, he knew it. That's why he persecuted Christians, because he didn't believe that was the way, right? And so he was actually defending his own faith by persecuting Christians. But Paul knew the word so much, he didn't necessarily need his brain to be transformed. What he needed was his heart, that heart of stone, to become flesh. Why do you think within a short amount of time, Paul immediately took on this commission to go out there and spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Even though the wretched man he is, he battled his flesh. And if you read his epistles, you just see this man who is constantly at war with himself because he gets backslid sometimes. And if you ever meet any of my buddies that are in prison that I just hope to pray get out, and I'm one of them, I'm fighting to get him home. And he had already done 27 years. I asked him one time, because he came from being a big racist, Aryan Brotherhood, tats all over him, swastika right here. And when I first met him in prison, it was my first year. I was in there 3.5 years. But when I first met him, I didn't want anything to do with him. Like, he scared me. Like, he had the white curly hair, swastikas. I saw him on the rec yard one time when we were just working out. But what was so weird was his appearance was totally different than what was coming out of his mouth or how he was treating me. And then I saw him, he took off his shirt and he had that cross on. I said, wait a second, it doesn't add up. And I was just such a baby in my faith. And we started talking and we were doing push-ups together, and he asked me where I'm from, and he asked me, where do I work? I'm like, I'm in the field squads. He's like, oh man, just kind of get through it. It's going to be the first year. After that, put into the plastics factory. And then I did. And then we ended up working together. He taught me how to weld a little bit. He taught me how to use power tools. He was my Paul while I was a Timothy. He taught me my way in the Lord, right? He was almost like, follow me as I follow Christ. And now I asked him one time, I said, man, I heard about all the stuff you did, Thomas. Like, I heard about the amount of people you killed in here whenever you were running, and there was the race wars that happened. And I know all the stuff you were doing with the Aryan Brotherhood and all the shots you had to do whenever they were called. But I know you now, and I just can't believe that you were that person. How? And he says, Greg, you just don't know what I've been delivered from. You don't know. I said, the reason why I am the way I am is just, man, if it wasn't for the blood of Christ. He says, I know that man is dead, but he's not gone, because I fight him every day. And every day I pick up my cross and I crucify my flesh. Mm-hmm. And I know that my iniquities will separate me from God, and I call upon the Holy Spirit to cover me every day. And I have to wake up and put on my full armor of God to fight this battle against my own flesh. And something beautiful, man. That's how I see you. I see you, and I hear in your story, that's what strengthens my faith. And that's what strengthens me to pursue finding the joy in suffering. You know, I'm the type of person that loves the pain. I love finding whatever I need to get inside the pain, because there's something there, right? Because it's there for a reason, because whoever is willing to go into that pain, whatever's in there is reserved for the ones that are willing to go in there, right? You're not going to find it in being comfortable. You're not going to find it in a life full of sin. You're not going to find it in that line of cocaine. You're not going to find it in the women or the money, right? And that's why it's influenced me, man, to live more of a purposeful life. And I feel like the biggest thing you might have gotten through all of this is just a sense of peace while you're serving Christ. And it's just addicting. It's such addicting.
Bro, it's a greater high than any drug on earth. Being yoked, being connected to, being used, feeling the presence of God. Dude, like, if I didn't go where he tells me to go and do what he tells me to do, I wouldn't be here right now. Everyone he brings me to gives me a platform to share this testimony. And I love what you said, man, because it's no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you are redeemable and you are worthy of love if you truly seek salvation. You know what I mean? Like, bro, it's funny because I wanted to get my cross. I wanted to bear the cross. And I had been looking for a faith-based tattoo artist. And I get a new follower on IG. And I started talking with him. And he's like, yo, I'm a pastor and a tattoo artist and in recovery. And so I'm like, bro, this is it. Like, this is it. And so I'm flying out to Washington to do that podcast. And I'm like, bro, I'll road trip and I'll come to California. Next thing I know, I'm on my way there. And then I'm like, oh my God, dude, you're putting my cross on me on Good Friday. On Good Friday, you're putting my cross on me. And, you know, I bear the cross on my back now. My entire back is a massive cross. And after I took that cross, the spiritual attack came harder than ever. That's when I succumbed to the drink and into the drug. I didn't even go looking for it. I had no compulsion for it. It came to me. And it's like, and I say, never let my faith waver no matter what. And bro, it's the only thing that made me get back from that was this cross, was the sacrifice of this cross, what it symbolizes, the gift that it is. And so it was, again, a test of my faith. And I prayed, never let my faith waver.
If you can give one message to the world from your story to where you are now, where you were, what would that be?
You are worthy of love to the greatest source of love any human being can ever know. You just have to be willing to believe it and accept it. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you are worthy of the greatest love that any human being can ever know. And I love how we talk about get back. When you receive that love, you get too. And there's a big difference. I always say, you got to get back up different than you were when you fell down. And if you're the same person when you get back up, you'll fall back down the same way. And so the only thing that I can say is receiving unconditional love is the most transformational gift you can ever experience. And all you got to do is accept it.
It's amazing. Appreciate you, man.
I mean, I do want to say this.
Yeah.
I'm giving away the most transformational part of my journey, and it's called Breaking Free from Resentment, and it's completely free for anybody who wants it, man.
That's awesome.
And so it'll be all over my IG.
We enjoyed this episode, man. I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your story and coming out here. It makes it makes it easy for us to listen. But I appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to share, man. It's been enjoyable to hear it and very relatable.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, so look, if you guys like this episode of the Get Back Podcast, like, comment, subscribe, turn your notifications on, and go to justmeats.com. Use code GETBACK for $25 off your order. See you soon.